The sun has barely risen in central London and the daily celebrity hunt is underway. Paparazzi like Perry Smiley are stalking their prey.
Hopefully there should be a few, but I think we might have Michael Caine a little bit later on round the corner at Radio 2, and then Robbie and Gary again at Radio 2, and I think Boy George is about, and a few others, so yeah, should be a good day, fingers crossed.
And the fans are waiting to glimpse their gods. This morning it's Robbie Williams and his former boy band sidekick, Gary Barlow.
We've been up since 4 o'clock this morning to come here to see Robbie.
Just to see him all here?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, where is it, Summer? And Gary, we like Gary as well, but not as much as Robbie.
Hey, baby. You're irresistible.
In today's Britain, celebrities are big business, and they've always played the game.
You're so powerful.
Celebrities want to be exposed because that's where they make their money.
You're invincible.
Somebody like Jordan, massive breasts.
Hey, baby.
They've turned out to be worth literally about 10 million quid. Fantastic. What are you going to do? Regulate her breasts? How many times are you going to show her?
With your sex.
But something's happened here that's gone beyond the usual shock and horror of press probing. A phone hacking scandal that's made pop stars like Robbie Williams change the way they live. Mr. Williams, has your phone been hacked by any celebrity tabloid scandal journalist?
Yes.
Are you worried about that?
No, I don't have a phone and I haven't had one for 2.5 years now. For that very reason.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting a bit intrusive, isn't it?
Could say that.
This is the story of a scandal that won't go away. It reaches from the shallowest depths of celebrity pap to the height of political and corporate might. It's embarrassed the Prime Minister, outraged the Queen, and made many ask the question, who's really running Britain?
The real scandal is, why did politicians not use the powers they had to hold this media organisation to account? And we were frightened of News International. They can destroy careers and have done so with aplomb over many, many years. And we should be asking ourselves questions about why did we not challenge them earlier.
Like all good British scandals, it started at the palace. 5 years ago, the tabloid newspaper News of the World, owned by Rupert Murdoch, published highly personal inside information about the Princes Harry and William. Fearing foul play, the palace called the police. It turned out the paper's royal reporter, Clive Goodman, had paid a private investigator, Glenn Mulcaire, to hack into the royal household's phone messages. Both men went to jail, and the paper's editor, Andy Coulson, resigned in disgrace. He told a parliamentary inquiry it was a one-off piece of shenanigans by a rogue reporter.
I never condone the use of phone hacking, and nor do I have any recollection of incidences where phone hacking took place.
But down in Dover, a former Murdoch journalist turned publican has a very different recollection of how things were. Now, Andy Coulson, did he know any of this was going on?
Well, you've got to say that someone who was in charge of the showbiz department at The Sun, who moved to deputy editor at News of the World, would have known about phone hacking, because how could you not? This was a priest who was living in a nunnery and sneaking in rent boys.
Paul McMullan was one of the original tabloid phone hackers. As an investigative reporter for News of the World, it was one of his tools for digging up dirt.
Poppers, amyl nitrate.
So how do you hack a celebrity's phone?
Right, well, if it's the usual trick is with 2 phones. So you dial one so that they answer the phone, and then immediately you dial the other one so that will be diverted to the messages. And then that's the way you get into the message system, and then you can just listen to the messages.
Simple as that?
As simple as that. And normally you just dial 4 zeros if they haven't changed their code. If they've changed their code, it gets a bit more complicated. You have to pay a PI to basically pay someone at Vodafone to tell you what the PIN is. But there are PIs who specialise in getting the codes for people, celebrities.
Hacking phone messages promised a chance of inside info, the murky secrets that stars and minor celebs would never volunteer in public.
At the time, in the late 90s and early 2000s, I think it was something that everybody did, and I did it and I put my hands up to it.
McMullan says News of the World paid a small fortune to private investigators.
In months we spent 3,000–4,000 quid. When I became deputy features editor, I thought, my God, how much are we spending? You're joking. We've really got to cut this down. Stop ringing up the PIs, do some work properly yourselves for a change. Anyone in the showbiz field, yeah, well, it was a tool of the trade. I mean, you were not just expected to do it, you were expected to get story. I mean, my main criticism of phone hacking is, by and large, it was rubbish. I mean, you got really rubbish information. You got stuff like, I'm just going up to Tesco's to get a pint of milk. You know, would you like anything else, love? So, well, that's not great, is it? It's not like, oh, I'm just smuggling in some plutonium.
And it wasn't just celebrities. Scotland Yard found the private investigator Glenn Mulcaire had targeted hundreds of prominent people, including cabinet ministers. Former Labour Minister Tom Watson was a member of a parliamentary inquiry into the phone hacking scandal.
There were politicians on the Mulcaire files, there were senior military, senior police, members of the royal family. Indeed, the heir to the throne had his phone hacked by News International. What we don't know is what other evidence lies in the Mulcaire file, and we do know that News International are utterly desperate to make sure that this evidence does not reach the public domain.
Is that all right? It's a really good opportunity for you to have an exclusive photograph in one of the national papers tomorrow.
News International is certainly spending a lot of shareholders' money keeping cases out of court. Max Clifford runs a PR company handling Britain's biggest celebrities.
So it's not organised by the London Evening Standard? It's just...
When he found out News of the World had hacked his voicemail, he sued for damages. But the claim never went to trial. In March, News International paid the astonishing sum of £1 million for a confidential settlement.
Since I sorted out my problem with the News of the World, a load of other people are suddenly coming out and going after them. But none of them would before, funnily enough.
So, a bit of a gravy train possibly now.
Possibly, yeah. It's possible they see an opportunity. But, you know, obviously that's between them and their lawyers, and News International. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next few months. But as I say, this whole business of phone tapping, personally, I'd be astonished if anything like the reality of it comes out, because there's too many powerful people that will suffer if the truth comes out.
News International is the British arm of Murdoch's global media empire, News Corporation. It's housed in a fortress-like compound in London's Docklands, and it's rather hard to question their executives on claims there was just one rogue reporter. None of them were prepared to speak to an outsider like me, and none of the journalists inside the empire have yet grilled their own bosses.
Company conference in
Take a look at this probing interview on Murdoch's American network, Fox News.
Executive Officer Rupert Murdoch. Mr. Chairman, thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate it, sir.
Fine, good afternoon.
The story that is really buzzing all around the country, and certainly here in New York, is that the News of the World, a News Corporation newspaper in Britain, used...
I'm not talking about that issue at all today, I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries, Mr. Chairman, that's fine with me.
I'm too far removed out of here.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, sir.
The idea that that Welsh windbag
could run our great nation was so appalling to me that I felt I had to pour the full bucket on him.
One former Murdoch insider did agree to speak to us.
Yeah, gotcha. Actually, that was when we sank the Belgrano during the Falklands conflict. And I've always been puzzled at the Liberal reaction to this, which is...
Kelvin Mackenzie edited News of the World's sister paper, The Sun, from 1981 to 1994, and was once described as Rupert Murdoch's favourite editor.
But the thing is that the Liberals have such an influence on the media that unfortunately you have to give them a good kicking occasionally just to cheer yourself up.
He says the so-called phone hacking scandal is a media beat-up.
Well, where is the proof? They've had 6 years to look at it. They've had parliamentary inquiries. They have had police inquiries, Scotland Yard inquiries. They've had Crown prosecutions inquiries. They've had Department of Public Prosecution inquiries. Everybody has trailed all over this, and not one piece of evidence outside the evidence that sent these two guys to jail has been discovered.
He's absolutely wrong. A parliamentary inquiry found that it was inconceivable that others were not involved. There are transcripts of illegally hacked phone messages produced by other News of the World's journalists that were not followed up by the police. And now we have whistleblowers who say that it was endemic at the News of the World. He's absolutely wrong on that. The real scandal is, why did the police not follow up the leads they had in 2006?
News International couldn't have wished for a better investigation. Detectives failed to warn hundreds of people that their names were on Mulcaire's list. They didn't even tell the Deputy Prime Minister, John Prescott, that his phone messages might not be safe. Perhaps even more surprisingly, they failed to tell one of Britain's most senior police officers.
There were colleagues of mine working along the corridor almost, who were looking into this and apparently discovered my name on a list of the private investigator Mulcaire, who subsequently went to prison for all of this. My name was on that list, but colleagues never even told me.
Brian Paddock had long been pursued by the tabloids. As the police commander for London boroughs, he had tried to bring in radical new means of community policing. He was also openly gay. He suspects his colleagues didn't want him stirring up more trouble with the Murdoch press.
I was a bit concerned that we weren't on the same team, but also that there might be something going on in terms of them wanting to scale down the investigation, narrow the scope of it. And if they had told me about it, then they know that I would have wanted it investigated.
Why would the police be nervous about investigating criminality?
Well, there are a number of theories as to why that might be. I mean, obviously, I don't know. I wasn't involved in the investigation myself. I mean, the police in the UK very much depend on keeping the public on side. The reputation of the police is very important. And these newspapers are very important in terms of forming public opinion about the police. So keeping newspaper editors on side is very important to make sure that a positive image of the police is portrayed to the public.
And they'd be scared of jeopardising that?
I think they would be scared of getting on the wrong side of newspaper editors and clearly having a massive investigation into widespread illegal activity by the newspapers wouldn't go down too well.
And there's another reason why police may have been reluctant to charge any other journalists. Those same reporters were bribing police.
Yeah, I think 200 quid for a number plate was the going rate. You'd meet them in a pub and you'd say, for example, you're watching a footballer's house and you know that he's supposed to be having an affair, and this car with a girl turns up, and you spin the plate and you would have your favourite copper who would do that for you. My feeling is the police just want it to go away. They don't actively want to investigate it. They don't want all the crooked policemen who've taken money from reporters to come out of the closet. I mean, why would they?
Tom Watson is fighting a lonely battle from the opposition backbench to have the whole investigation reviewed.
The police investigation has been lacklustre at best and probably negligent. There are hundreds of people who may have been the victims of crime, who've not been informed about it. There were clear pieces of evidence that, had they been followed up, I'm sure would have led to more people being put in the dock and tried for criminal wrongdoing. The Metropolitan Police in London have some big questions to answer. The only way we're going to get to that is through a judicial inquiry or from an independent investigation by another police service.
Would you like to see Rupert Murdoch himself called to such an inquiry?
Yes, I think Rupert Murdoch is, as the head of News International, is responsible for creating the culture in his news organisation that allowed these journalists to go away and feel that they had the right to hack people's phones. So yes, he's the boss. He should be responsible for his staff.
We will vigorously pursue the truth, and we will not tolerate wrongdoing.
Murdoch has long been a giant in British media, as he reminisced on a recent visit to London.
Many of the defining moments of my career have been in Britain. This includes fundamentally changing the newspaper industry in the 1980s, which has helped give us all the uniquely vigorous press which we enjoy today. It also includes creating modern digital television.
And he's about to get even bigger. News Corporation owns 39% of B-Sky B, which produces Sky News. But it's now pushing for complete control.
It's a big, challenging issue for the current government. And if they were doing the right thing, they would say, no, we want a plurality of voices in our media. This cannot happen. But there's a big question mark about whether they will have the courage to do that.
The smell of criminality has done nothing to harm News International's standing with government. Remember Andy Coulson, the News of the World editor who resigned in disgrace? He's now the Prime Minister's press secretary.
As the Director of Communications, he does an excellent job for the Conservative Party and behaves properly and in an upright way in everything that he does. Thanks very much.
Is his job safe?
Yes, of course.
Coulson has been a bridge between the Conservative Party and Rupert Murdoch, who openly backed the Conservatives in the last election. Labour MP Tom Watson believes all Britain's parties, including his own, are terrified of upsetting Murdoch.
The barons of the media, with their red-topped assassins, are the biggest beasts in the modern jungle. They have no predators. They are untouchable. They laugh at the law. They sneer at Parliament. They have the power to hurt us, and they do with gusto and precision, with joy and criminality. Prime ministers quail before them, and that is how they like it. That, indeed, has become how they insist upon it. And we are powerless in the face of them, and we are afraid.
The allegation is that they're afraid of Rupert or afraid of News International or whatever. I don't see much example, if you trawl through the press over the last 5 years, of any fear of throwing any punches, throwing any rocks at Rupert. Back in your own country, you don't see any sign of it, despite everything that's said. Right? Where is the fear? What is it? What is it that Rupert could do? What is it? Tell me. Tell me in a democracy. Will somebody just say to me, well, what is it that a businessman based in New York could actually do about a democracy 3,000 miles away? What could he do?
But Max Clifford, the PR spin doctor who spent a lifetime working with the tabloids, knows just how powerful they can be.
It's common sense, isn't it? Politicians rely on popularity. It's the media that gets that message out there. Most of the media in this country right now supports the Conservative Party. But of course the most powerful overall would be the Rupert Murdoch organisation. So David Cameron would want the Sun and the News of the World, the Times and the Sunday Times to continue to support him, particularly as there's massive cuts coming up all over. So The last thing that David Cameron would want would be a lot of problems over this phone hacking, which obviously everybody wants to talk to Andy Coulson about.
Read all about it, paper. Did anybody honestly believe that if your newspaper said vote communist, vote Labour, vote Conservatives, do you think people take any notice? They don't take any notice at all. It can't happen. Democracy doesn't work out like that. People are far too clever.
Or perhaps they're just more interested in celebrities than politics.
I've got an itch that I need to scratch you. Visit like a pussycat, and I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one. Now I can stalk the city streets, down into the...
As the day draws to a close, the showbiz pageant goes on. More famous faces, more vacuous gossip, and just the occasional annoying question from a non-showbiz journalist.
We're asking celebrities how concerned they are about the phone hacking that's been going and how intrusive it makes.
I'm not here to talk about phone hacking. Come on. It's come on.
The scandal will likely continue to grow as more revelations emerge. But the government and News Corporation appear confident of weathering the storm. For all the liberal outrage, it's events like this that will fill tomorrow's tabloids. It's all so much more appealing than a scandal you wouldn't read about.